It was 1:30 in the morning when the pounding on my front door nearly made me jump out of bed. At that hour, nobody should be knocking unless something was very wrong. I grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy flashlight, and yelled out, "Who is it?" The voice that came back froze me in place. "Olivia, it's me. Please, open." I unlocked the door and found my sister, Ray, slumped against the frame, her face swollen, one eye half shut, her lip bleeding. She collapsed into my arms like her body had just given up. My gut reaction wasn't fear, it was rage. This wasn't the kind of bruise you got from tripping over furniture. This was deliberate. I pulled her inside, set her on the couch, and tried to keep my voice calm. "Ray, what happened?" Her hands shook as she clutched my sleeve. "Kyle. He hit me again. Because of her. Because of that woman. Kyle Donovan. My brother-in-law, though calling him that feels like an insult to the word. He always played the part of the charming small-town husband, but I'd seen cracks in that image for years, and now the mask was gone. I grabbed a clean towel, pressed it against her lip, and tried to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. "Stay still, I've got you." She flinched when I reached for her blouse, then let me lift it enough to see the dark bruise spreading across her ribs. That was no one-time slap. That was someone using his fists with intent. "Why tonight?" I asked, my voice low. Ray's eyes filled with tears. "He found out I knew about Lydia. He didn't even try to hide it. Said I should shut up and sign whatever he puts in front of me, or else." The name hit me like a shot. Lydia Torres, the so-called friend, who'd been showing up around town a little too close to Kyle. Apparently, the affair wasn't just gossip, it was fuel for violence. I forced down the heat in my chest and shifted into what the army drilled into me. Control the scene, secure the casualty, gather intel. I wasn't just her sister tonight. I was a soldier off the field and back in another kind of fight. "Ray, you're not going back there," I said firmly. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit up with Kyle's name. I picked it up before she could and read the text flashing across. "Open your mouth again and you'll lose everything." I tossed the phone back down, jaw tight. He's already digging his own grave. Ray shook her head, panic flashing in her eyes. Don't push him. He'll come after you too." I gave her a look. Let him try. My training doesn't leave much room for drama. But the truth is, I'd seen enough combat zones to recognize the same patterns at home. Intimidation, escalation, control. The only difference was the battlefield. I fetched the first aid kit, patched her up as best I could, then sat across from her at the kitchen table. She was trembling, sipping water like it burned going down. I kept my voice steady. "I need to know everything, no skipping details." She hesitated, then told me how it had been building for months. The late nights, the shouting, the push that turned into a slap, then a fist. She confessed she'd kept quiet because she thought she could handle it, that if she stayed calm, he'd calm down too. It was the classic cycle, and it made me sick. By the time she finished, my fists were clenched so tight my knuckles hurt. Ray whispered, "I shouldn't have come here. I didn't want to drag you into this." I leaned forward. "Ray, this isn't you dragging me into anything. This is me telling you you're not fighting this alone anymore." "Heaven's sakana." She nodded weakly, tears rolling down her cheek, and for the first time all night I saw a flicker of relief in her eyes. I stood up, walked down the hall, and opened my closet. Inside hung my dress uniform, pressed and ready. I didn't put it on for show. It was a reminder of who I am and what I stand for. If Kyle wanted a fight, he wasn't just picking one with Ray. He was picking one with a U.S. Army officer who had no problem running operations under pressure. I buttoned the jacket, strapped on my belt, and grabbed the phone. There was only one number I needed to call right now. "Thomas Whitaker," I said when the sleepy voice answered. "It's Olivia Grant. Start the plan, now." There was silence for a moment, then the lawyer's tone sharpened. "You're sure?" 100%. I hung up and walked back into the living room. Ray was half asleep on the couch, her face bruised but calmer than before. I pulled a blanket over her and sat nearby, staring at the stack of folders on my desk. I'd already started a new kind of mission tonight, one I didn't train for in the army, but one I damn sure knew how to fight. The night was quiet except for her breathing and the occasional buzz of Kyle's unanswered calls lighting up her phone. I didn't need more proof. I had enough to know that this was going to escalate, and I was ready for it. The headlights of my truck cut through the empty road as I sped towards Street Mary's medical center. Ray slumped against the passenger seat, clutching her ribs. She kept mumbling apologies under her breath, like she was the one who had something to be sorry for. I tightened my grip on the wheel. "You didn't do a damn thing wrong, stop saying sorry." She didn't answer, just stared out the window, tears streaming down her cheek in silence. At the ER entrance, I hopped out first, waved down a nurse, and helped lift Ray out. Her legs buckled, so I scooped her arm over my shoulder and half-carried her inside. The automatic doors slid open, flooding us with the sharp smell of antiseptic and cold fluorescent light. Dr. Angela Cortez, a woman I knew from town, spotted me immediately. She'd patched up more than a few soldiers back from deployments, so she knew what damage looked like. Her expression tightened the moment she saw Ray's face. "Room 3, now." The nurse guided Ray onto a gurney and wheeled her inside. I followed until Angela held up a hand. "Let me check her first. Give me 5 minutes." I stood outside the room, jaw clenched, watching through the glass panel. Angela carefully pressed along Ray's ribs, nodding for the nurse to mark down bruises. The camera in my head was already rolling. I wasn't just seeing a beating. I was seeing evidence. A few minutes later, Angela stepped out. "No broken ribs, but she's got severe soft tissue damage. Multiple bruises, old and new. Olivia, this isn't the first time." He swallowed hard. I figured. She'll need pain management and monitoring. But she's stable. You want my advice? Start documenting every mark. I already had my phone in my hand, camera open. That's exactly the plan. When Ray was cleared, I stepped back inside. She was lying under thin hospital sheets, eyes shut, her face pale against the pillow. Angela gestured for me to wait until the nurse finished cleaning her wounds. Then she nodded at me. "Do it now." I pulled the blanket back gently, one section at a time. First, her lip split clean through. Snap. Then, her cheek purple and swollen. Snap. I shifted the sheet lower and caught the massive bruise along her side. Snap. The camera shutter echoed like gunfire in the small room. Each photo wasn't just for me, it was ammunition for the battle ahead. Ray flinched at the flash. "Please, don't." I lowered the phone. "Ray, this isn't just pictures. This is proof. He doesn't get to walk away from this." Her eyes flickered with fear. "You don't know him. He'll make me look like the liar." I leaned in, voice steady. "Then we'll bury him with facts. Trust me." The nurse cleared her throat politely, reminding me we weren't alone. I pocketed the phone and stepped back. Ray turned away, curling slightly on her side. Angela came over and spoke quietly. "I'll write the medical report in detail. Contusions, swelling, possible rib fractures. You'll want copies. Send them to my lawyer's office," I said flatly. Her brow lifted. "Already lawyering up?" I smirked without humor. "I don't half-ass wars, Angela." She didn't push further, just scribbled notes and walked out with the nurse. The room fell quiet, just Ray's shallow breathing. I dragged a chair beside her bed and sat down. My uniform itched from hours of wear, but I wasn't about to complain. Ray needed to see I wasn't moving. Her phone buzzed again on the bedside table. 10 missed calls, all from Kyle. The latest text popped up. "Say one word and you'll regret it." I picked it up, scrolled without hesitation. Same threats, over and over. My stomach turned. This guy wasn't just abusive, he was sloppy. He left a paper trail wide enough to drive a Humvee through. Ray stirred and snatched the phone from me with surprising strength. "Don't, he'll know you read them." "Good," I muttered. She buried her face in her hands. "You can't fight him like this. He's got people in his pocket. Everyone will believe him before they believe me." I leaned back in the chair, crossing my arms. "Then we stop talking about what people believe. We make it impossible for them not to see the truth." She didn't argue, just shut her eyes again, exhausted. By the time the IV drip was done, the sky outside was turning gray. Angela came back with a clipboard. "She's good to go. Keep her on rest and fluids. Here's the report, you'll want to sign it." I scanned the document, every line noting visible injuries, approximate age of bruises, and recommended scans. My signature went down at the bottom with firm strokes. Another piece of the puzzle locked in. I wheeled Ray out myself, ignoring the stares from a few night shift orderlies. The hospital entrance doors slid open, letting in the crisp morning air. My truck was waiting at the curb. I helped Ray climb in carefully, buckled her seatbelt, then tossed the medical folder onto the dash. Driving back, she whispered, "What if he finds me?" "He won't," I said. "Not before I find him first." Her silence told me she didn't believe it yet, but she would. Back at my place, I got Ray settled in the guest room. She fell asleep almost instantly, her body finally surrendering to rest. I closed the door softly, then went straight to the dining table, spreading out the evidence so far. Hospital report, photos, and Kyle's messages I'd screenshotted before she snatched the phone. It wasn't much yet, but it was the skeleton of a case. Enough to push back, enough to start building. I poured myself coffee, black and strong, and sat down across from the pile. The steam rose between us like smoke from a battlefield. My phone sat beside the mug. I picked it up, scrolled through contacts, and hovered over Marcus Hale's number. A fellow soldier, a friend, and someone who understood operations better than most cops in town ever would. I hit call. "Marcus? It's Olivia. I need backup. Quiet. For now." His voice came groggy but sharp enough. "What's going on?" "You'll see soon enough. Just be ready." End of quote. I ended the call before he could ask more, then leaned back in the chair. Outside, the sun was breaking over the horizon, spilling light through the blinds. Ray was safe for now. But safety wasn't the mission. The mission was evidence, leverage, and ultimately justice. And this was only the start. The knock on my front door the next morning wasn't frantic like Ray's had been. This one was steady, almost casual. When I opened it, Marcus Hale stood there in jeans and a faded army t-shirt, coffee in one hand, duffel bag in the other. "You didn't say much on the phone," he said, brushing past me like he owned the place. "But the look on your face says it all." I closed the door behind him. "My sister's in the back room. She's sleeping, don't wake her." That. Marcus set the coffee down on the counter, unzipped the duffel, and pulled out a small set of surveillance gear, nothing fancy, just what any former infantryman with too much time on eBay might collect. Motion sensors, a handheld recorder, even a pair of binoculars that looked like they'd seen a rock twice. "You're serious," he muttered, scanning my living room. "Dead serious," I answered. We didn't waste time. Marcus set up sensors near the windows and front door. I installed a camera above the porch, angled, so it captured the street and anyone approaching. It wasn't paranoia, it was insurance. Once the place was secure, I sat him down at the table, spreading out the hospital report, the photos, and the texts. Marcus studied them quietly, his jaw tightening the further he read. "Damn," he said finally. He didn't just rough her up, he wanted her scared enough to shut up. "Yeah, and now he's going to regret leaving marks." Marcus looked at me, waiting for more. "I need eyes on Kyle," I said. "Where he goes, who he talks to, everything. If he thinks Ray's just hiding out, he won't see this coming." Marcus gave a half smile. "You're running this like an op." "That's because it is one." We split tasks. I would handle the legal front with Whitaker, while Marcus covered the fieldwork. I grabbed my jacket and drove straight into town, heading for Whitaker's office on Main Street. The place looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70 wood paneling, squeaky floorboards, and a secretary who greeted me by name before waving me through. Whitaker himself was behind a cluttered desk, glasses low on his nose. He looked more like a tired history teacher than a lawyer, but the man was sharp when it counted. "Olivia," he said, setting down his pen. "You sounded urgent." "Hell." I laid the hospital report on his desk, followed by the photos and my phone with Kyle's threatening texts pulled up. "This isn't just domestic trouble, he's crossed lines. I want everything filed, documented, airtight." Whitaker adjusted his glasses, scanning each page slowly. He didn't react much, but I caught the twitch in his jaw when he read, "Open your mouth again, and you'll lose everything." "This is solid," he said at last, "but public opinion in this town is slippery. He's a business owner. He shakes hands at Sunday service. People like that have shadows long enough to cover their sins. Then we drag him into the daylight." I shot back. Whitaker leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "We'll need more than bruises and threats. We need proof that ties his violence to motive, adultery, fraud, anything that shows pattern and intent." My phone buzzed. It was Marcus. I answered on speaker. "Olivia, you're going to want to see this," he said. "I just pulled security footage from your neighbor's porch cam. Guess what it caught?" Whitaker raised an eyebrow as I tilted the phone. Marcus sent over the clip, and within seconds it was on Whitaker's screen. Ray pounding on my door at 1:30 in the morning, crying out for help, her voice faint but clear enough to make anyone's chest tighten. Whitaker sat forward. "That is gold. Direct evidence of her condition right after the assault. No way he spins this as a misunderstanding. Handvol." I felt a grim satisfaction settle in. "That's one piece. We'll get more." Whitaker nodded. "Build me a portfolio. Medical, video, financial if you can get it. The stronger the net, the harder he falls." I stood up, shaking his hand. "Consider it done." When I left his office, I spotted a couple of locals on the sidewalk giving me sideways looks. Small towns love gossip, and clearly word was spreading faster than facts. I ignored them and walked straight to my truck. On the drive home, I called Marcus back. "Good work on the footage. Keep your eyes on Kyle tonight. Bar, shop, anywhere he might show up." "You got it," he said. "But Olivia, you know this could get ugly, right? He's not the type to fold." I smirked even though he couldn't see it. "Neither am I." By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sun was dipping low, painting the street orange. I checked the porch cam already live and recording. Inside, Ray was still asleep, her breathing steady. I sat back at the table, opened my laptop, and loaded the files one by one. Photos, medical report, porch video. I created encrypted backups on 2 drives, slipping one into the safe in my closet. In the Army we say, 1 is none, 2 is 1. Same rule applied here. As night fell, Marcus texted, "Target sighted. Rusty Spur Bar. With company." I didn't need details to know who company was. Lydia Torres had just stepped into the game. I pulled my truck into a dark corner of the lot across from the Rusty Spur Bar, killed the headlights, and sat low in the seat with my camera ready. The neon sign buzzed like it was about to die, throwing red light over the gravel. Marcus had already texted me the license plate Kyle was driving tonight. Silver Ford, dent on the bumper, easy target. It didn't take long. Around 8, headlights swept across the lot, and that silver truck rolled in like clockwork. Kyle got out, straightening his shirt like he was headed to prom instead of sneaking around on his wife. Seconds later, Lydia stepped out of the shadows. Tight dress, heels clicking on the asphalt, cigarette dangling like she thought she was in a movie. I zoomed in and snapped the first photo. Kyle's hand sliding right to her waist. Click. His mouth too close to her ear. Click. Her laugh loud enough to carry. They walked into the bar like they owned the place. I waited, snapping another shot of the truck, parked under the glowing sign. License plate visible, timestamp in the corner. I had the receipts now, but I wasn't done. After 15 minutes, I slipped out of the truck and circled around to the alley near the back entrance. The bar was loud music blasting, people shouting over beer. Through the grimy window, I caught them at a table, leaning into each other. Kyle was pouring drinks like he didn't have a wife in a hospital bed just hours earlier. I hit record on the handheld cam Marcus had lent me. Video proof. Kyle touching Lydia's hand, sliding his arm across her shoulders, kissing her cheek. Each second recorded was another nail in his coffin. When they finally left, I followed at a safe distance, headlights off until they pulled into a cheap roadside motel. I stayed far enough not to spook them, but close enough to catch the glowing red vacancy sign in the same frame as them walking in together. Snap. Snap. The camera caught them holding hands at the lobby desk, then disappearing down the hall. I didn't need anything more. Anyone with eyes could see what was happening. I drove back to my place and dumped the files onto my laptop. Dozens of photos, clear video, the plate number shining like a badge of stupidity. Each file I copied onto 2 drives and labeled with exact times. Ray was awake in the kitchen when I came in, holding a mug of tea with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Her eyes were red but dry. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice rough. "Getting what we need," I said, setting the camera on the table. She didn't move as I flipped through the photos on the screen. Kyle with Lydia at the bar. Kyle holding her hand. Kyle walking into a motel with her, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Ray's face tightened. She didn't cry. She just stared, gripping the mug so hard I thought it would crack. He didn't even try to hide it, she whispered. No, he didn't, I said. And that's going to burn him. I slid the laptop toward her. This isn't your shame, this is his. And now we have proof. For the first time since she showed up at my door, Ray let out a bitter laugh. Proof. Like this town cares about proof. I leaned on the table. They'll care when it's in front of a judge. Trust me. I'm Sixter. The sound of my porch camera pinged. Motion detected. I pulled up the feed on my phone and saw a dark figure across the street, smoking and leaning on a car, watching the house. Marcus texted me seconds later. One of his guys. I'll stay on him. Don't worry. I locked the front door anyway. Ray noticed but didn't say anything. She just sipped her tea, staring at the frozen frame on my laptop of her husband with another woman. I sat down beside her, poured myself coffee, and kept my voice even. This is just one part. Tomorrow, we start stacking the rest. Ray didn't answer, but she didn't close the laptop either. She kept looking at the evidence until her eyes finally closed from exhaustion. I carried her mug to the sink, shut down the computer, and slipped the hard drive into the safe. Then I checked my sidearm, set it on the table, and sat in the dark with only the hum of the fridge behind me. Out on the street, a car engine revved before pulling away. The porch cam caught the taillights fading into the night. Another piece of proof. Another sign that Kyle was already worried. Good. He should be. The next morning, I parked outside Whitaker's law office again, this time with Marcus waiting in his truck across the street just in case Kyle decided to make an appearance. I walked straight past the secretary, pushed open Whitaker's door, and found him already on the phone, a stack of papers spread across his desk. He hung up the moment he saw me. Olivia, he said, motioning for me to sit. You're not going to like this. Spare me the build-up, I said, dropping into the chair. He slid a manila folder toward me. Inside were copies of property deeds, the ones tied to the Redwood Ranch, our family's land. My stomach sank as I read the names. Ray's signature was right there on the transfer forms, signing over ownership to none other than Lydia Torres. I looked up sharply. This is bullshit. Ray would never sign this. Whitaker nodded. I agree. The notary's stamp is legit, but the handwriting, off. It's sloppy, rushed. I've seen forgery cases before. This has all the marks. I studied the signature carefully. Ray's real one was clean, a habit she picked up from years of office work. This version looked like a bad impersonation, the loops shaky, and the letters uneven. When did this go through, I asked. Last week, Whitaker replied. Filed at the county clerk's office. Fast-tracked somehow. I clenched my jaw. So he's not just beating her. He's stripping her of everything she has. Whitaker leaned forward. And if this holds, Lydia becomes the owner on record, which means Ray loses not just the marriage but the land she inherited from your parents. Huh. The heat in my chest burned. Over my dead body. I took out my phone, snapped photos of every page, and sent them to Marcus instantly. Seconds later, he texted back. Got it. We'll need handwriting samples for comparison. Whitaker tapped his pen on the desk. If we can prove this is forged, it's fraud and possibly conspiracy. That ties directly to motive for the assault. He had to silence her so she wouldn't contest it. I stood. Then we prove it. I also. When I got back to the house, Ray was at the kitchen table with a blanket around her shoulders. She looked smaller somehow, like she was folding into herself. I sat beside her and slid the copies across the table. She looked down, then blinked hard. That's not my signature. I never signed those papers. I know, I said. Her hand trembled as she traced the fake signature. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd take it anyway. I thought he was bluffing. He wasn't, I muttered. Marcus came through the door just then, still in his ball cap from surveillance duty. He tossed a small notebook onto the table. Got your old job applications, Ray. Signatures all over. Perfect for comparison. She looked at him, startled. How did you— Don't ask, he said, pulling up a chair. I lined up her genuine signatures against the forged one. The difference was glaring. Even Ray saw it. This is fraud, plain and simple, I said. He used you, your trust, and now he's trying to erase you. Her eyes filled, but this time it wasn't just pain, it was fury. He can't take Redwood. That land's been in our family for generations. I nodded slowly. Then we fight back with everything we've got. Marcus leaned in, pointing at the documents. This right here is bigger than bruises and cheating. This is theft. And theft leaves trails. We dig into the clerk's office, see who processed this, and how it got pushed through so fast. That. Ray's voice steadied as she said, I want to be there when you prove it. I put my hand over hers. You'll get your chance. But first, we make sure he can't bury us before we get there. That night, I scanned the documents into a secure drive, cross-referenced dates, and flagged every suspicious detail. Same, day filing, unusual notary location, the clerk's initials I didn't recognize. Every bit of it stank of shortcuts. While I worked, Ray hovered behind me. At one point, she said, You know what hurts most? Not the hits, not even the cheating. It's that he thought I was so weak I wouldn't notice him stealing from me. I turned in my chair. You noticed, and now we've got proof. He underestimated the wrong sister. Marcus chuckled from the couch. No kidding. The guy's practically gift-wrapping his own downfall. Still, none of us were laughing for real. Because forgery wasn't just a crime on paper, it was motive. And motive meant danger. If Kyle was willing to steal land, what else would he try to shut Ray up for good? I filed the copies away, set the hard drive in the safe, and checked the porch cam again. Another car creeping by, slow, headlights dimmed, same as before, watching. I locked the door and pulled the blinds. This wasn't paranoia. This was the reality of declaring war in a small town where everyone knew everyone and sides got picked fast. But I wasn't losing sleep over it. If Kyle thought he could intimidate us, he hadn't seen what discipline looked like when you combined military training with a sister's fury. I poured Ray another cup of tea, set it in front of her, and gave her a steady look. You're not broken, Ray. You're pissed. Use it. She stared at me for a moment, then let out a sharp breath. Then let's make him pay. The next morning I walked Ray into the diner downtown, figuring she needed some normalcy after everything with the land documents. The place smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee, the kind of comfort food that usually softened bad mornings. But as soon as we stepped through the door, the chatter thinned. Heads turned, forks paused. I guided Ray to a booth by the window, ignoring the stares. A waitress shuffled over with a pot of coffee, but didn't pour until I asked twice. Even then, she barely looked at Ray. Ray stirred sugar into her cup with a shaky hand. They've heard, haven't they? I didn't answer right away. Across the room, two women leaned close, whispering behind their menus. One of them glanced at Ray, then muttered something that made the other snicker. Yeah, I said finally. They've heard. Or at least they've heard his version. The front door jingled again. And just like that, Kyle strolled in clean jeans, polished boots, not a mark on him. He carried himself like a man who owned the room, shaking hands, slapping backs. A couple of guys by the counter laughed at whatever joke he dropped. The same guys who used to wave at Ray every Sunday after church. My jaw locked. Ray shrank against the booth. He didn't come to our table. He didn't need to. The way people welcomed him said enough. When we left, Ray kept her head down, but the whispers followed us outside. One woman muttered loud enough for us both to hear. Some women just like to make trouble. By the time we reached the car, Ray's eyes were wet. They think I made it up. They think I asked for this. And, I started the engine hard enough to rattle the dash. Let them think whatever the hell they want. The truth doesn't need their permission. But the truth doesn't shield you from cruelty. That afternoon, at the grocery store, an old neighbor I'd known since high school looked me straight in the eye and said, I don't know what game your sister's playing, Olivia, but it's tearing the town apart. I wanted to punch the smug off his face. Instead, I said, the only one playing games is Kyle, and you're too blind to see it. By evening, the air felt heavy with suspicion. Ray sat curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She dropped it suddenly, as if it burned. He's spreading posts about me. Look. She shoved it into my hands. A social media rant Kyle, claiming Ray was unstable, that she hit him, that she was trying to ruin his business. Dozens of likes, supportive comments. Marcus, who had been cleaning his Glock at the kitchen table, looked up. Classic play. He's poisoning the well. If everyone doubts her, it doesn't matter how strong the evidence island. Ray pressed her palms to her temples. I can't walk down the street without feeling like they're judging me. I crouched in front of her. Then stop worrying about them. We're not fighting for their approval. We're fighting for your life. But even as I said it, I felt the sting. Because in towns like ours, reputation was survival. And Kyle knew it. Later that night, I stepped out onto the porch. A piece of paper fluttered against the door frame. I pulled it free. Thick black marker, jagged handwriting. Shut up or lose your sister. My pulse spiked. I scanned the street. A pickup crawled by. Its headlights dimmed, then turned the corner. I carried the note inside, laid it on the table in front of Marcus and Ray. Marcus picked it up, sniffed. Cheap paper. Gas station notepad. Could be anybody. Ray hugged her knees to her chest. He's not going to stop until he destroys me. 9. I leaned over the table, my voice flat. He's already destroying himself. We're just going to help speed it along. The next morning, I walked into Sheriff Raymond Burke's office with the evidence folder under my arm. He was a broad man with a permanent scowl, but I'd known him long enough to tell when the scowl was real. I dropped the threatening note on his desk. Add that to the file. Burke studied it, then looked at me. You sure you want to push this hard, Olivia? He's got friends in this town. I crossed my arms. So do I. He sighed, scribbled something into his log. I'll put a patrol by your place. But don't expect miracles. He's not stupid. He knows how to toe the line. I leaned in. He's already crossed it. Walking out of that office, I didn't feel reassured. But I did feel clear. We couldn't rely on the town to save us. We had to make the case airtight. That night, Ray sat across from me at the kitchen table, staring into her tea. Why do they believe him? After everything he's done, why do they believe him? I met her eyes. Because lies are easier than facing the truth. And he's feeding them exactly what they want to hear. Her hand tightened on the cup. Then we give them the truth so loud they can't ignore it. I almost smiled. That was the fire I needed to see. So I pulled the file closer, added the threat note behind the forged deed copies, and looked at Marcus. We're not just fighting him anymore. We're fighting the whole damn narrative. And we're not losing. I woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of Ray screaming. I sprinted into her room and found her thrashing, tangled in the sheets, her voice hoarse from yelling, "Don't touch me, don't touch me." I grabbed her shoulders gently. "Ray, it's me. You're safe." She opened her eyes, wild and glassy, before collapsing against me, sobbing. Her whole body shook like she was back in that house with him. I held her until she calmed, but the truth hit me like a sucker punch. Ray wasn't just bruised, she was broken in ways I couldn't stitch together. Later that morning, she sat at the table with a blank stare, stirring oatmeal she didn't eat. Marcus set down his coffee and said what I was already thinking. She needs more than bandages. She needs real help. I nodded. I'll call Dr. Angela Cortez. She's worked with veterans before. She'll know what to do. When I made the call, Angela didn't hesitate. Bring her in this afternoon. PTSD isn't just for combat soldiers, Olivia. Abuse victims relive the war in their own homes. The words stung because they were true. By noon, Ray was in Angela's quiet office, clutching a pillow while the doctor asked gentle questions. I stood outside the door, restless, fighting my own ghosts. Because while Ray was trapped in her flashbacks, mine were rushing back too. The smell of burning fuel, the snap of gunfire, the way sand stuck in my throat during a convoy ambush in Kandahar. My chest tightened until I had to step outside for air. Marcus followed me out. "You're not doing her any favors if you burn out too, Major." I shot him a glare. "I'm fine." He raised an eyebrow. "Yeah? Your hand's shaking like you're back on patrol." "That." I shoved the tremor into my pocket, furious at myself. But he wasn't wrong. The battlefield had changed, but my body still thought it was at war. That evening, when we returned home, a plain envelope sat on the porch. I knew before I opened it what it would say. Inside, block letters screamed, "Drop it or lose her for real." Ray froze when she saw it. Her face drained of color. I crumpled the note in my fist. Enough of this shit. Marcus leaned over my shoulder. "We're dealing with amateurs. If he really wanted to scare us, he wouldn't use gas station paper. Still, we treat it like gospel. I'll set up cameras front and back." Ray whispered, "What if he means it?" I crouched in front of her. "Then he'll have to get through me first." The next morning, I carried the new note straight to Sheriff Burke. I slammed it on his desk. He rubbed his temples. This is escalation. Whoever's helping him isn't smart, but they're desperate. I'll authorize extra patrols near your place. That's not enough, I snapped. You know damn well patrol cars don't scare men like Kyle. Lock him up. Burke shook his head. Not without airtight evidence. I leaned closer. Then let me make it airtight. Back home, I spread every document across the dining table. Medical reports, photos of bruises, the neighbor's video, the forged deed, and now the threats. Ray sat beside me, tracing her finger over her own signature, comparing it to the forgery. Her voice cracked, but it carried steel. Don't let him win, Olivia. I squeezed her hand. Not a chance. Marcus arrived with a flash drive. Got more for the file. Security footage from the pawn shop. Guess who showed up there late last night? Kyle's lawyer. Probably moving money or hiding assets. I copied it to the evidence folder, labeling it with military precision. Every file, every timestamp, every threat stacked in order like a battle plan. That night, as Ray slept with a nightlight on, I sat at the dining table in full uniform. Not because I needed it, but because it reminded me who I was. Not just a sister, not just a daughter. A soldier who knew how to fight wars nobody else wanted to fight. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered anyway. A male voice, low and mocking. Drop it, Major. Soldiers come home in body bags all the time. You want your sister to end up the same? I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles cracked. Listen close. If you or Kyle so much as breathe near her again, I'll bury you in so much evidence the DA won't even give you bail. The line went dead. I lowered the phone, pulse hammering, and looked across the table at the wall of evidence we'd built. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was war, and I'd already chosen my side. When dawn broke, I was still at the table, uniform still on, staring at the files. Ray padded in, her hair messy, her face pale but calmer. She saw me sitting there and whispered, "You're not giving up, are you?" "Not in this lifetime," I said, sliding the evidence folder toward her. "It's time to hand this over, all of it." She touched the cover, then looked at me with something I hadn't seen in weeks. Trust. I pulled into the gravel lot of a dive bar on the far edge of town, headlights off, the engine low. Marcus had tracked Lydia's routine for a week, and tonight she was here. Same as always, loud dress, louder laugh, drinking on Kyle's dime. I slipped off my jacket, tucked my badge into my pocket, and walked in like I belonged. The place stank of tequila and cigarettes. Country music bled from a jukebox, and a couple of guys shouted at a pool table. Lydia was at the bar, red lipstick smeared, phone in hand, smirking at whatever Kyle had texted her. I took the stool beside her. She side-eyed me, suspicious. "Do I know you?" I set an envelope on the counter. "Not yet, but you should open that." She frowned, peeled it open, and froze. Inside were copies of the forged land transfer and a printout of her bank debts, credit cards maxed, mortgage behind. Her laugh was brittle. "Where the hell did you get this?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is you're about to drown. And Kyle's holding the rope." Her nails tapped the glass. "He told me it was all handled. Said the land was ours now." "Ours?" I snorted. "Sweetheart, you're nothing but his decoy. He forged signatures, used your name to cover his theft, and when it all goes south, guess who's left holding the bag? You." For the first time, her confidence cracked. Her hands trembled as she folded the papers back into the envelope. I leaned closer. "You want out? You tell the truth. You testify. You help me sink him, and maybe you walk away without handcuffs." Her eyes darted toward the door. "If Kyle finds out I even talked to you." As if on cue, 2 of Kyle's hired goons walked in. Same clowns who'd been tailing us at night. They spotted me instantly and started toward the bar. I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled my badge from my pocket and laid it on the counter, in plain view. "Go ahead, boys. Make my night." They froze mid-stride. One muttered something under his breath, and both backed out, shooting daggers my way but unwilling to test me in front of witnesses. Lydia exhaled shakily. "Jesus. He really sent them here for me?" "No," I said flat. "He sent them for me, but you just saw what side he's willing to sacrifice first." Her lipstick-smeared mouth pressed into a hard line. "So what's your offer?" "Testify," I said. "Tell the truth about the land, the threats, Everything. I'll get you protection. Without you, Kyle keeps spinning lies. With you, we bury him. She tipped back the last of her drink, slammed the glass down, and laughed bitterly. You act like I've got a choice. You don't, I agreed. Not if you want to breathe free air. For a long minute she said nothing. Then she whispered, I'll do it, but you swear he doesn't get near me again. I nodded once. Done. I walked her out the back, where Marcus was waiting in his truck. She stiffened when she saw him, but he just tipped his cap. This is Lydia, I said. She's coming with us. Marcus raised a brow but didn't argue. He opened the back door, and she slid in nervously. As we drove toward the safe house Burke had set up on the edge of town, Lydia kept glancing out the window, paranoid. He'll find me. He always finds me. I twisted in my seat. Not this time. You just flipped the script, Lydia. Now he's the one running. Marcus pulled into the dark driveway of a rented cabin, the sheriff's cruiser already parked out front. Burke stepped onto the porch, arms folded, face grim. Got your witness? He asked. Yeah, I said, opening the back door. And she's ready to talk. Burke studied Lydia, then me. This better be worth the heat you just brought down on all of us. It is, I said, because now Kyle's foundation is crumbling from the inside. No. Inside the cabin, Lydia sat at the kitchen table while Burke went over the basics of protective custody. She signed the paperwork with a shaky hand. I watched her closely. This wasn't bravery, not yet. It was survival. But survival was enough. When we stepped back outside, Burke lit a cigarette, his eyes on the tree line. You realize Kyle's going to go nuclear when he figures this out. I adjusted my jacket. Good, let him. I'll beat him. On the ride back, Marcus finally asked the question hanging in the air. You trust her? No, I admitted. But I don't need to trust her. I just need her to be scared enough of Kyle to stick to the truth. Ray was waiting when we got home, curled on the couch with the news playing low. She looked up when I came in. Where were you? Getting us a new ally, I said. Her brows knit. Who? Someone who finally realized Kyle doesn't protect anyone but himself. For the first time in days, I saw the tiniest spark in her eyes. Not relief, not hope, but something close. Belief that maybe, just maybe, the tide was turning. Burke's deputies kept a steady rotation outside the safe house, their headlights sweeping the gravel driveway every hour. Inside, Lydia sat at the kitchen table chewing her nails down to a cup of untouched coffee in front of her. I leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching her wrestle with the weight of her choice. You look like a woman trying to outrun her own shadow, I said finally. She shot me a glare. You don't get it. Kyle doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. You're right, I said. But that's his weakness. Men like him can't imagine anyone walking away. That's why you're more dangerous to him than anyone else. Her laugh was bitter. Dangerous? I'm terrified. Marcus sat on the couch, polishing his sidearm, his voice low but firm. Fear's a good motivator. Just make sure it motivates you to open your mouth when the judge asks questions. Lydia looked between us, then down at her trembling hands. If I testify, I'm dead. No, I corrected. If you stay quiet, you're disposable. He'll toss you aside the second you're no use. You've seen it. She flinched, and that told me everything. Kyle had already made her feel replaceable. The next morning, Burke escorted us to a secured conference room at the courthouse. Papers were spread across the table, statements, evidence logs, photos. Lydia sat across from me, fidgeting with her sleeve. Burke placed a recorder in the center. All right, Miss Torres. Start from the beginning. No skipping details. Her first few sentences came out shaky, but then the dam broke. She described nights at the bar when Kyle bragged about taking Ray's land. She admitted he showed her the forged papers, laughing about how easy it was. She even recalled overhearing threats him, saying Ray wouldn't live to contest it. Burke scribbled notes, but I watched Lydia's face. She wasn't lying. She was purging. When it was over, Burke clicked off the recorder. This testimony ties everything together. If she repeats it on the stand, we've got him boxed in. Lydia slumped in her chair. You don't understand. I can't go back out there. People will know I talked. I leaned forward. That's why you're staying under protection until trial. You stick with us, you'll walk out free. You slip, Kyle will chew you up. Your choice. Her eyes glistened, but she nodded. Back at the house that night, Ray sat at the table sorting through bills when I walked in. She glanced up. How did it go? She gave us everything, I said, sliding into the chair across from her. Names, dates, details, enough to make him sweat. Ray exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. So it's real now. Not just us saying it, someone else too. Exactly, I said. For the first time, she smiled faintly. It didn't erase the bruises or the nightmares, but it was there, a crack in the darkness. Later, Marcus and I stepped out onto the porch. The night was quiet except for crickets. He lit a cigarette, took a long drag and said, "She's still a wild card. Don't forget she picked his side until it suited her not to." "I don't care why she flipped," I said. "I just care that she did." He flicked ash into the gravel. "Let's just hope she doesn't flip back when the pressure hits." The following day proved his point. News spread through town like wildfire. At the hardware store, I overheard two men whispering about how Lydia had betrayed Kyle. At the diner, a waitress muttered, "Figures she'd sell him out for a deal." Public opinion didn't matter in court, but it mattered to Kyle. And when cornered animals panic, they bite. Sure enough, that night, the safe house phone rang. Burke answered, then handed it to me, his face tense. Kyle's voice came through, slick as oil. "Trading secrets with my girl now, Major? Thought you were smarter than that. You mean the girl who just buried you with testimony?" I shot back. His chuckle was dark. "She's lying, and you know it. But hey, good luck. People around here believe me before they believe some washed-up soldier and her broken sister." I clenched my jaw. "We'll see what the judge believes." Before he hung up, his voice dropped to a threat. "You can't guard her forever." I slammed the phone down, rage simmering under my skin. But instead of letting it eat me alive, I turned it into resolve. The next morning, Lydia was moved again, new location, tighter security. Ray and I sat with Whitaker at his office, going over the mountain of evidence we'd built. He looked at us over his glasses. With Lydia's statement, the fraudulent deed, the medical reports, and the threats. "This is the strongest case I've seen in years. But brace yourselves, his attorney's going to fight dirty." Ray squared her shoulders. "Let him. I'm done hiding." Whitaker smiled faintly, then tapped the stack of files. "Good. Because once this hits court, there's no turning back." That night, back at the house, Ray made dinner for the first time in weeks. It was just boxed mac and cheese, but watching her stir the pot while humming under her breath felt like victory. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, memorizing it. She caught me staring. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Just good to see you standing again." She rolled her eyes but smiled. As the three of us sat down to eat, Marcus raised his glass of water. To Ray and to making bastards sweat. Ray laughed, clinking her glass against his. And for that moment, the house felt lighter, stronger, unshakable. The morning sun cut across the kitchen table, lighting up the piles of documents Whitaker had left us to review. Ray sat in her robe with a pen in hand, her voice steady as she read aloud parts of her draft statement. "He threatened me after every beating. Said if I told anyone, I'd lose more than my dignity. He said he'd take Redwood Ranch out from under me. And then he did." Her hand trembled slightly, but she didn't stop. She finished the page, set it down, and looked at me. "How does it sound?" "Like the truth," I said. Marcus leaned against the counter with his arms crossed. "And the truth doesn't need dressing up. Stick to it." Ray exhaled slowly. "Then that's what I'll do." For the next several hours, we worked through every detail. Hospital reports, photographs, witness statements. I drilled her like I would a young soldier before inspection. "Say it again. This time, shorter. Clearer. No hesitation." "Ah, well." She repeated her answers, stronger each time. When her voice faltered, I tapped the table. Again. At first, she groaned. "I'm not in boot camp, Olivia." "No," I said. "But court's going to feel worse. If you can say it here under pressure, you can say it there." By the 5th round, her voice was firm. By the 10th, it was steel. That evening, Whitaker stopped by to check progress. He listened to Ray's statement, nodding. "She's ready," he said. Then he glanced at me. "And you?" I shrugged. "I'll handle myself." Whitaker smirked. You're not cross-examining in Kandahar, Major. This is a courtroom, keep your temper. Judges hate fireworks. I didn't argue, but Marcus gave me a look that said he agreed. The following day, we met at Whitaker's office to finalize exhibits. He laid out the photos on a long table, Ray's bruises, the forged deed, Lydia's signed testimony. Each piece was bagged, tagged, and numbered. Jurors are like recruits, Whitaker said. You spoon-feed them. Line it up, step by step, so they can't get lost. We'll start with the medical records, move to the video, then the fraud, then the mistress's statement. By the time we're done, the only one looking like a liar will be Kyle. Ray studied the photo of her swollen eye. Her jaw tightened. Show them all. Don't hold back. Whitaker nodded. That's the plan. Later that night, Ray sat on the porch with me, wrapped in a blanket against the chill. She looked at the stars and said, "Do you think the judge will actually believe me?" I turned toward her. It's not about belief. It's about evidence. And we've got enough to drown him. She gave a small smile. You always make it sound so simple. It's not simple, I admitted. But it's doable. And that's all that matters. The next morning, Burke stopped by with updated security details. We'll have an escort take you to the courthouse. No solo travel until this is done. Ray frowned. Is that really necessary? Burke tapped the folder in his hand. I've seen men like Kyle. Cornered, they get sloppy. Don't underestimate him. Marcus muttered. She's not. We're just making sure he's the one sweating this time. For the rest of the week, we drilled every scenario. Cross-exam questions, character attacks, even the possibility of Kyle trying to smirk her into silence. I made Ray stare me down while I barked accusations at her, forcing her to hold her ground. At one point she snapped, "Stop yelling, I get it." I lowered my voice. Good. Now remember how that feels. Because if you can shut me down, you can shut down any lawyer he throws at you. By Friday, Ray wasn't just answering questions, she was owning them. When Marcus asked, "Why didn't you leave sooner?" Ray shot back. Because I thought love meant patience. I was wrong. And I won't be wrong again. He blinked, then gave me a rare smile. She's ready. Lao. That night, the three of us sat around the kitchen table eating takeout. Ray poked at her fries, then looked at me. You know what the turning point was? When you made me practice until I hated you for it. Somewhere in the middle of that, I realized I wasn't scared anymore. I was mad. Mad works, I said. Mad gets you through the door. She raised her glass of soda. Then here's to being mad. Marcus clinked his bottle against hers. And to making Kyle choke on it? Axe. The mood stayed light, but I didn't forget the weight of what was coming. I'd seen soldiers psych themselves up for missions only to crumble under fire. Tomorrow wasn't bullets and sand, but the stakes were just as high. Still, as I watched Ray laugh at one of Marcus's dry jokes, I knew she was no longer the woman who collapsed on my doorstep. She was ready to face him, and I was ready to stand beside her, no matter what it cost. The courthouse smelled like old wood and disinfectant, the kind of place where history clings to every bench. Ray walked beside me, chin high, a pale scarf wrapped around her neck to hide the last fading bruise. Marcus flanked her on the other side like quiet security. When we pushed through the double doors into the courtroom, I felt the air shift. Kyle was already there in a tailored suit, smirking like he'd just walked into a poker game he couldn't lose. His lawyer, Valdivia, sat beside him, flipping through a stack of notes with a calm arrogance that made me want to knock his teeth in. The room filled quickly, neighbors, curious onlookers, half the damn town. Some whispered, some avoided our eyes, but all of them were here to watch the spectacle. Judge Henry Caldwell entered, his gavel cracking against the wood. This court will come to order. Whitaker stood, shoulders squared. Your Honor, this is a case of domestic assault, fraud, and conspiracy. We will show beyond any doubt that Kyle Donovan abused his wife, Ray Donovan, and attempted to steal her inherited property through forgery. Valdivia rose smoothly, his voice sharp. Your Honor, this is a case of bitterness and fabrication. The so-called victim is using false allegations to extort my client, while her sister, a military officer, abuses her authority to interfere. Caldwell's expression didn't change, but his eyes flicked toward me briefly. I gave him nothing back. The prosecution began. Whitaker presented Ray's medical records first. Photos of bruises filled the projection screen. Murmurs rippled across the room. Some people looked away, others leaned forward. Then the neighbor's video played the sound of Ray's desperate knocking at 1:30 a.m., her choked sobs captured in the grainy footage. The whispers turned into silence heavy enough to crush bone. Ray sat rigid in the witness chair, hands folded tight. Whitaker guided her gently. "Mrs. Donovan, can you tell the court what happened that night?" Her voice trembled but held steady. "He hit me. He said I was worthless. He said if I told anyone, he'd take Redwood Ranch and leave me with nothing. That's when I ran to my sister's house." Valdivia pounced on Cross. "Mrs. Donovan, isn't it true you and your husband argued often? That you sometimes raised your own voice? That perhaps you provoked him?" Ray didn't flinch. "Raising my voice doesn't explain broken ribs or forged deeds." Valdivia's smirk faltered, but he pressed on. "And isn't it true you're only saying this now because your sister is helping you, because you want to punish him financially?" Ray's eyes locked on him. "No. I'm saying it now because I don't want to end up dead." The jury stirred. Whitaker let the words hang before moving on. Next came the forged deed. A clerk from the county office testified, admitting Kyle himself had dropped off the paperwork, claiming Ray was too busy to sign in person. The signatures glowed on the screen, side by side with Ray's real ones. The difference was laughable. Valdivia tried spinning it, perhaps sloppy but not criminal. That's when Whitaker dropped the hammer. "Your Honor, we also have testimony from Lydia Torres, Mr. Donovan's mistress." The courtroom buzzed like a hive. Lydia walked in under guard, hair pulled back, no makeup, nerves written all over her face. She sat down, adjusted the mic, and glanced at me before speaking. "Kyle promised me land. Said it was ours if I stood by him. He laughed about forging the signatures. He bragged she'd never fight back. I stayed quiet because I was scared. But I'm not quiet anymore." Kyle shot up from his chair. "You lying." "Order," Judge Caldwell barked, slamming the gavel. "Mr. Donovan, sit down or you'll be removed." Valdivia tried damage control, grilling Lydia about her debts, her affair, her motives. She held her ground. "Yes, I made mistakes. But I didn't forge signatures. I didn't beat Ray. Kyle did." The words landed like bullets. Finally, Whitaker called me. I swore in, took the stand, and fixed my gaze straight ahead. "Major Grant," Whitaker said, "why did you get involved in your sister's case?" "Because she came to my door half dead, begging for help. Because the system drags its feet, and because I'm not about to watch a man bury my sister alive with lies." Valdivia came at me hard. "Major, isn't it true your military background makes you aggressive? That you might have influenced your sister with intimidation?" I leaned forward. "You're confusing discipline with intimidation. I don't scare my sister. Kyle did that all by himself." Somebody in the gallery actually clapped before the bailiff hushed them. By the time closing arguments rolled around, the room felt electric. Whitaker laid it out plain. Bruises don't lie. Signatures don't forge themselves. Mistresses don't turn on lovers unless the truth is worse than the betrayal. Kyle Donovan is guilty of violence, of fraud, of arrogance, and now he's out of time. And Valdivia sputtered through his rebuttal, but it was clear the tide had turned. Even the jurors looked unimpressed. Judge Caldwell didn't rule immediately. This was a preliminary hearing, not the final trial. But his words carried weight heavier than any gavel. Given the evidence presented, this court issues a protective order for Mrs. Donovan, nullifies the fraudulent property transfer, freezes Mr. Donovan's assets, and refers charges of domestic violence and fraud to the district attorney for prosecution. Bail will be reconsidered given the severity of threats. The gallery erupted gasps, whispers, even a few cheers. Kyle slammed his fist on the table, red-faced, spitting curses until deputies dragged him out in cuffs. Ray sat frozen, tears spilling quietly, until I touched her shoulder. She looked up at me, not broken, not afraid, but finally free enough to breathe. The afternoon sun baked the courthouse steps, the heat bouncing off the pavement as deputies hauled Kyle into the transport van. His wrists were cuffed, his head down, his once perfect suit crumpled and damp with sweat. People on the sidewalk shouted some insults, some cheers, some just gawking at the fall of a man who thought he was untouchable. Ray stood beside me, her scarf pulled tighter around her neck, not out of shame but as armor against the stairs. Her hand slipped into mine, and for the first time her grip wasn't trembling. Whitaker came down the steps behind us, legal pad tucked under his arm. "It's not over," he reminded gently. "This is just the start of the DA's case. But the injunction holds. Ray's safe. The land is safe." Safe. A word that finally had weight. We got Ray home, and she moved through the house differently, straighter, quieter, not flinching at every creak of the floorboards. That night she cooked dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread, but she hummed while stirring the sauce. I hadn't heard her hum in months. Marcus raised an eyebrow as we sat down to eat. "She's coming back," he said simply, like he was reporting a mission status. Ray laughed softly. "Don't jinx it." But the corners of her mouth stayed up. The following week, the local paper ran the story. Sheriff's office confirms charges against Kyle Donovan. Domestic violence, fraud, property theft. His mugshot was plastered across the front page. Businesses quietly distanced themselves. The pawn shop shut its doors. His buddies at the diner stopped laughing when his name came up. The town that once whispered against Ray now whispered against him. A slow, bitter turn, but a turn nonetheless. Ray started therapy twice a week with Dr. Cortez. The nightmares didn't vanish overnight, but they dulled. Some nights she still woke gasping, but instead of curling into herself, she got up, poured a glass of water, and sat with me on the porch until her breathing slowed. One night, she said, "I thought I'd never feel normal again. But maybe normal isn't what I need. Maybe I just need to feel like me." I squeezed her shoulder. "Then that's the mission. Getting Ray back." She nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. Meanwhile, I returned to duty at the base. My CO asked if I was ready, if my head was clear. I told him the truth. No soldier's head is ever completely clear, but I'm steady. He nodded, and that was enough. On weekends, I drove back to the ranch. Ray had started working in the garden again, pulling weeds with dirt-streaked hands, humming while she worked. She even joked about repainting the barn, said she'd pick a color Kyle would have hated. Marcus came by with supplies and ended up painting alongside her. Watching them bicker about which ladder was sturdier felt like watching the world stitch itself back together. As for Lydia, she disappeared after the testimony, relocated under protection until the DA needed her again. I didn't waste energy worrying. She'd played her part, and that was enough. The final piece of closure came when Judge Caldwell signed the order officially restoring Redwood Ranch to Ray's name. We drove to the clerk's office together, and Ray signed the confirmation with steady hands. When the clerk stamped it, she exhaled hard, almost laughing. "He tried to erase me," she said quietly. "But here I am, still standing, still mine." I wrapped an arm around her. "Damn right it's yours." That evening, we sat on the porch with bowls of ice cream, watching the sun sink over the pasture. Ray leaned back in her chair, bare feet propped on the railing. "You know," she said, "I don't feel broken anymore. I feel pissed, and that feels a lot better." I laughed, the sound sharp and real. "Anger's fuel. Use it." She smirked. "Don't worry, I plan to." The air grew cooler as the stars came out. Marcus joined us, dropping into a chair with a sigh. "So, Major, what's next? Back to base, full-time?" "Yeah," I said. "But I'll be here whenever Ray needs me. Army or not, family comes first." Ray gave me a look that was half grateful, half teasing. "Careful, or I'll get used to having you around." "Don't push it," I said, but I smiled. Weeks later, Ray got a job offer from an accounting office in town. When she came home with the news, she was glowing. I got it. Full-time. Benefits. My own office. I hugged her so tight she squeaked. "That's not just a job, Ray. That's a damn reset button." Watching her walk out the door on her first day, dressed sharp, hair pulled back, I felt a weight lift off my chest. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. And for me? I carried the scars battlefield and family field alike, but they didn't define me. What defined me was the sight of my sister smiling again, the ranch safe, and Kyle rotting in a cell waiting for his trial. Justice wasn't perfect. It was messy, slow, and bruising, but it came. And when it did, it gave Ray back her breath, her laugh, and her future. That was enough for me. Some nights I still sit on that porch, boots up, coffee cooling in my hand, thinking about how close I came to losing my sister. People like Kyle think fear will keep you quiet, that a bruised woman won't stand up, that family will crumble under pressure. What he never understood is that blood runs deeper than intimidation, and once you push the wrong woman too far, there's no turning back. I've been through war zones overseas, but nothing tested me more than this fight at home. And if there's one thing I learned, it's that revenge isn't about payback, it's about reclaiming what someone tried to steal from you. Your voice, your future, your damn dignity.